So by some miracle, Banjo just got announced for Smash, and I damn near pooped my pants. Banjo-Kazooie is one of my all-time favorite games, and I haven't done a video on it since literally the second video I ever made on this channel. Don't watch it. If ever there was a time to make another Banjo video, now would be the time to do it. So now is the time I do it. Like Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie has a main collectible that pretty much the whole game is based around acquiring, and in Banjo's case, they're golden jigsaw pieces called Jiggies. Collecting them requires the player to traverse obstacles, solve puzzles, or win minigames, and therein lies the bulk of the game. So I decided to rank what I think are the best and worst Jiggy missions in the first Banjo-Kazooie game. I was originally gonna do best and worst stages, but let's be honest, I can't sit here for like 10 plus minutes just talking about Rusty Bucket Bay. Way! Alright, let's go. Now, normally I'd have come up with a way to categorize topics so I'd have an order to go in, but I really couldn't think of anything for this video, so I'm just gonna go. So the first Jiggy on this list is the first one in the game, the one that's essentially handed to you right upon entering Gruntilda's lair. Now, it's not just straight up given to you. You do kind of have to pay attention to your surroundings and find it at first, but it's the first real sense of reward in the game, and it also teaches you that Jiggies can really just be lying around anywhere. I know this seems simple, but this sets the player up for what's to come and tells you, hey, keep your eyes peeled because shit can just be lying around. It also teaches you how Jiggies work as well, because before even entering the first stage, that Jiggy needs to be found and then used to open the door to Mumbo's Mountain. Banjo is set up a little different than, say, something like Mario 64. In Mario, you start the game off with nothing and can just enter the first stage, and all that's needed to unlock different stages is your star count. In Banjo, though, your Jiggies need to be used to unlock stages, sometimes nowhere near where the stage is actually located. So right off the bat, the game teaches you that Jiggies can be found pretty much anywhere, and they need to be used to reveal a stage's entrance, and it all starts off with that first Jiggy. The Timed Maze in Gobi's Valley, also known as my first introduction to anxiety. So a lot of the Jiggies in Gobi's Valley are located inside various structures or pyramids which all house some kind of puzzle or platforming challenge which must be completed to be granted a Jiggy. And there's one in particular that I still at times have trouble sleeping over. See, there's a timed maze which if you don't find your way out of quickly enough, you get crushed by a spiked ceiling falling on top of you. It's really hard to tell where to go, and it's basically all trial and error because the camera isn't zoomed out enough to give you a good enough bearing on where you are in relation to the maze. This was obviously intentional, but it's extremely nerve-wracking, and to make matters worse, there's also a witch switch located inside the maze as well, so you have to spend even more time exploring in a place where you definitely don't want to be exploring. And if you miss it, you'll just have to re-enter and do it all over again to find the witch switch. There's loads of dead ends, and it's honestly still terrifying even now as a grown-ass adult. This Jiggy is the first time in the game where I truly felt powerful, and it also is the first time you're taught that things in the game can be destroyed to reveal collectibles. It's really easy to miss for a first-time player, but it's definitely an aha moment once you get the Beak Buster and put 2 and 2 together. Congratulations! You now know that sometimes if you break shit, you'll find a Jiggy, and this is super important because so many of the game's challenges are based around breaking something, whether it be an object, a gate, a door, or anything in between. This is one of the most frustrating things in this whole goddamn game, and even now, as an adult, it's a pain in the ass. So in Bubble Gloop Swamp, you need Mumbo to transform you into a tiny crocodile and then enter this big crocodile's nose. Inside, you'll find Mr. Vile. Fuck Mr. Vile. He challenges you to a little minigame to earn a Jiggy, and it's one of the most infuriating minigames Banjo-Kazooie has to offer. At first, it's just a simple game of eat more shit than he does in X amount of time, followed by eat more than he does but avoid this color in X amount of time. But these aren't the problematic parts. It's phase 3 that makes me want to rip my hair out. So the final phase of Mr. Vile's game is one where you need to eat more than him, but you can only eat the color displayed on the screen for it to count as a point. And eating the wrong color makes you fall behind by briefly stunning you. Mr. Vile never seems to make a goddamn mistake, and he always seems to be right where he needs to be when the color changes, and oftentimes you get fucked by having the color change right as you're about to eat one. He's too fast, and his AI is too good, and even the game ending in a tie results in you losing and getting attacked as punishment. Actually, you can't even try the minigame again until you let him attack you. When you finally do win, chances are you're probably only going to win by 1 after 60 whole seconds of your heart beating out of your chest. This one is bullshit. So I never got this one conventionally, but I think it's pretty fun nonetheless. There's a Jiggy that lies all the way at the top of Treasure Trove Cove. Normally, you're supposed to get it by gradually climbing to the top, but I always just kind of flew all the way up there. But I think that's why I like it. This stage is the second one in the game, and it's where you first get the ability to fly. Once you do, the stage becomes this big playground once you realize there's really no boundaries for where you can fly. So of course, my first instinct was to go crazy and fly as high as I could. And sure enough, there's a Jiggy right at the peak of the whole stage, and once you grab it, you have a bird's eye view and can just breathe in the entire scope of the stage. stage. Basically, this Jiggy mission makes you feel really powerful, and that's pretty cool. It also teaches you to try to explore literally everywhere, even places that seem out of reach. Okay, so here's another bad one from Bubble Gloop. This one's a memory game, basically like Simon. The difference here, though, is that with a game like Simon, things happen right in front of you and you need to replicate them immediately after. In this minigame, it's not just matching things after they happen. You see, there's a big difference between matching something after you see it and totally changing the perspective and putting lag time in between seeing the pattern and actually being able to select it. Leaves way more room for error. There's a degree of separation that happens here, and it's way harder, at least in my opinion, to match something after completely altering the viewpoint. Not to mention, out of the 3 challenges in this game, the jump in difficulty between the second and third one hardly seems appropriate. This isn't like the hardest thing in the world, but it's pretty frustrating and not at all something I'd ever refer to as fun. This one's in Freeze Easy Peak, and the objective is simple. Fly around and kill all those snowmen that you've grown to quickly hate. Once you learn the Beak Bomb ability, an aerial attack that torpedoes Banjo and Kazooie forward into a target, it becomes immediately apparent why the previously undefeatable snowmen have giant X's on their hats. Rampage all the Sir Slushes and you'll be rewarded a Jiggy. Now this one may be hard and frustrating because aiming the Beak Bomb is fucking atrocious, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel great massacring all these bastards that have been mocking me since before I even entered the stage. Take your medicine. Raising Clanker in Clanker's Cavern, also known as my second introduction to anxiety. So Clanker is the friendly iron shark that for some reason has a blowhole like a whale, but otherwise clearly resembles a shark who lives in a watery cavern and acts as Grunty's garbage disposal, or trash compactor, whatever, he deals with garbage. He lives a sad life. Upon entering the stage, he's submerged underwater, but not because he's having a nice swim, but because he's stuck anchored to the floor. So pretty much the first thing you should do in the stage is swim all the way to the depths of Clanker's Cavern and release him so he can surface. Doing so requires you to swim through this key that cranks the chain and loosens it, and it takes 3 passes to fully loosen the chain. Once you do, a Jiggy appears on top of Clanker. Here's the problem. You have to do all of this and then still make it back to the surface without fucking drowning. Now this little fish swims around in a circle and burps out air bubbles that you can use to regain some air, but those bubbles only replenish a couple points of air at a time, and the swimming in this game is absolute garbage. That is one negative thing I will say about Banjo, and I said it in my video years ago, but the swimming controls are terrible. Because of this, it's pretty easy to completely miss an air bubble, which then just puts you in even more danger. Not to mention, there's a Jinjo and notes down here too, so you'll have to spend even more time fucking around down here than just for the Jiggy mission. By the time you've done everything, chances are you're running pretty low on air and will have to either frantically swim to the surface in hopes you'll make it in time, or stay there and farm for air, which, if you aren't good with the controls, is probably more risky than just booking it to the surface. Okay, so as a kid, I didn't really like this one that much, but as an adult, I think it's pretty clever. So, there's 3 switches located somewhere on the ship that makes these whistles blow. It's not rocket science to figure out that a password clearly needs to be entered, and if you enter the wrong code, the steam from the whistles will damage you. The clever thing is how the answer to this puzzle is hidden. If you pay attention to your surroundings and you explore Rusty Bucket Bay, eventually you'll see a number written on the boat that's slightly obscured by an enemy, making it both easy to miss if you don't know what you're looking for, but also it makes it just a bit challenging as you need to lure the enemy away first before you can even see the whole code. And this is the only spot in the stage where a number is written, so depending on what you see first, either the number or the puzzle itself will at some point flip a switch in your head, making you go, "Oh my god, wait a minute," which personally made me feel pretty accomplished. Alright, you all knew this one was gonna be here. Everyone knows it, everyone hates it, it's arguably the most difficult Jiggy in the game. It's the Rusty Bucket Bay engine room. Now there's 2 Jiggies in here, but we're gonna focus on the more nerve-wracking one. Beak busting both switches to stop the propellers at the back of the ship, and then needing to quickly dart outside and grab the Jiggy before time runs out. Now this is nowhere near the first timed mission in the game, but the difference here is that this Jiggy requires you to not only traverse what's probably the most difficult platforming challenge in the game without falling to your death, but then do it again quickly so you can race back to the Jiggy. If up until this stage you never got a game over before, this will most likely be the room that does it. Banjo-Kazooie, despite being a 3D platformer, is far more about puzzle solving and exploration rather than straight up precise platforming, and the controls just weren't really based around those kinds of challenges. Not to say that's a bad thing, the game's controls are designed around what the game expects of you, but not when it comes to this. Nowhere else in the game is this level of precision asked of you. The game's controls do not in any way aid themselves to this particular challenge, and it shows. It honestly feels like they're fighting against you. This room is the end of many a failed speedrun and the bane of almost every single Banjo-Kazooie fan. If ever there was a Jiggy to take the cake for worst one in the game, this has gotta be it.
Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, maybe go ahead and click that like button and subscribe to see more. If you want to see more right now, there's a couple videos right there you can check out. And if you want to help me eat food and not die, my Patreon link is right there too.